Boa tarde a todos. Bem-vindos a mais uma Casual Conference, que são conversas informais sobre biodiversidade, comissariadas pelo CIBIO, a quem eu mais uma vez agradeço a disponibilidade para nos trazerem estes investigadores e estes temas relacionados com a biodiversidade a Serralves, que é um tema que nós naturalmente acarinhamos bastante. A sessão de hoje será dedicada ao tema que está ali naquele slide, a magia do Butão, o reino da biodiversidade e da cultura. Para quem não sabe, o reino do Butão localiza-se no sul da Ásia, faz fronteira a norte com a China, a sul, a este e a oeste com a Índia. É um pequeno país, tem cerca de metade da área de Portugal e, a nível de paisagem, caracteriza-se por planícies subtropicais no sul e que depois vão subindo até às paisagens subalpinas dos Himalaias. Só a título de curiosidade, o primeiro europeu a pisar o solo do Butão foi um português, um missionário que se chamava Estevão Cassela, e que foi responsável por esta proeza em 1626. Quem nos vem hoje apresentar esta sessão é o Dr. Nawang Norbu, que é o diretor do Instituto Ugyen Wangchuck para a Conservação e Ambiente do Butão. É um interessado pela investigação dos processos ecológicos e em como usar a ciência como meio para a conservação da vitalidade e resiliência dos nossos sistemas ecológicos. É doutorado pela Escola Internacional de Investigação Max Planck, da Alemanha, tem um mestrado da Universidade de Twente, na Holanda, e é licenciado em Engenharia Florestal na Universidade do País de Gales. O Instituto Ugyen Wangchuck para a Conservação e Meio Ambiente é uma instituição governamental para a investigação e formação. Tem por objetivo promover uma melhor gestão do património natural do Butão, usando uma ciência baseada em investigação e transmissão de resultados científicos rigorosos para os profissionais de ecologia, líderes ambientais e decisores políticos, e foca-se essencialmente em 4 grandes áreas: a silvicultura sustentável, a biologia de conservação, os recursos hídricos e a socioeconomia e ciências políticas. A sessão será moderada pelo professor Paulo Célio Alves, que é professor associado da FCUP, e investigador do CIBIO e doutorado em Biologia. Nawang, please. Obrigado.
Olá. Obrigado. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say thank you all for coming. We always say in Bhutan that there are many, many other things you could have been doing right now. But the fact that you have come here, it must not be only coincidence. I think there must be some kind of linkage. We always believe in Bhutan, we believe in so many things. One of the things we believe is timing and also interdependent origination. So thank you for coming. What I will try to do today is very briefly talk about Bhutan, biodiversity, and its culture. Before I used to work in the institute, I used to work in a park. This is actually one of the trek sites. So you're walking from the Himalayas and down. Actually, if you walk further down, in about 2 days, you will reach India. Porto. And this is Bhutan, and I checked out on Google Map. This is about 8,000 kilometers, so quite far away, but still connected, I think. Maybe some of you don't know much about Bhutan. So Bhutan is a very small country here. We have India on all 3 sides. Then there is Nepal. Actually, we don't share any border with Nepal as such. And on the northern front, we have Tibet. I should call it China, to be politically correct. Before I jump into Bhutan, I want to tell you a little bit about the region where Bhutan is located. It's the Eastern Himalayas. So when we talk about the Himalayas, usually the first image which comes into our mind is really huge mountains. So, but the Himalayas are into two. You have the Western Himalayas, which is really sort of dry. So it's very dry, it's towards Pakistan and other areas. And then we have the Eastern Himalayas here, which is sort of wet, so because it's affected by the monsoons. So that's where Bhutan falls in. I want to tell you a little bit about this region because this region to me is, there are many, many special places on our planet, I think. So amongst the special places, I think the Eastern Himalayas is definitely one of the most special on our planet. And people are saying that in the next 10, 15 years, this could be a serious source of conflict between India and China. So when you look at these rivers, actually if you look at it in one way, it's actually like a tree, right, which sustains life. This sustains life for a lot of people here, about 500 million people. Ganges and the Brahmaputra is responsible about feeding 500 million people on the Indian subcontinent. It also has immense potential for generating hydropower energy. And all of that is happening because the forests here are still sort of good, and the forests are responsible for sustaining the rivers in this region. So in a sense, the forest becomes indispensable. But now I want to focus a little bit on what's happening to these forests. And depending on what's happening to the forest, what will happen to the rivers. So this is a map of Nepal. This is Bhutan. Nepal is here. What is happening to Nepal? If you look over the last half a century, the Nepalese have almost finished all their forest. The forests are going. So in this entire eastern Himalayan belt, only about 25% is remaining now of the original forest cover. And this has happened in Nepal, it has happened because over the last 50 years, again, their population is almost jumped by five times more. The Nepalese have been very, very busy in terms of producing babies. I have always telling my friends that we should catch up, but for some reason, it's not happening. So if you take a closer look at what's happening to the forest, this is Bhutan, this is Arunachal Pradesh, and this is Nepal. So you can see that there are hardly any forests left now, middle belt forest in Nepal. So if you talk about conservation, if you talk about forest as being responsible for providing water, you will definitely see that Nepal will be in a serious problem. It's filled with people now. So these are protected areas which are scattered across. So again, in Nepal, there is no connectivity. In Arunachal Pradesh, where the forest is fairly good, there are hardly any protected areas. In Bhutan, we have still a good forest cover, and we have a good network of protected areas. I'll touch a little bit about this in more detail later. But what's happening, interestingly, is these pink dots you see are the real-time deforestation taking place on the ground. So every time somebody is cutting, these data is getting uploaded. And these are areas where forest is being lost at a tremendous rate. So forest is being lost in Arunachal Pradesh. It's being lost in parts of India and down into Myanmar. And if you look at Asia today, in Thailand, Malaysia, there's a lot of deforestation. Even in Thailand, Indonesia, everything is getting converted into rubber plantations. And now Burma used to be the sort of last place where people were not allowed to go because there was a military regime. They locked up Aung San Suu Kyi, yeah? But now everything is changing. They're opening up. And now because they're opening up, Burma is set to be the next frontier in Asia where all the growth will take place, which means not many forests will be left in Burma as well. So that leaves Bhutan. So in Bhutan, even today, because we have not been breeding as fast as the Nepalese, we have forests which go up all the way from almost sea level up to the high mountains, partly to do with our population. We have less than 1 million. So I was joking with Professor Paulo that to meet a Bhutanese is very, very rare. Out of 7 billion and less than 1 million. So we have the Greater Himalayas, which rings the northern part of Bhutan. So all ice covered. Then if you come down, we have the Inner Himalayas, And within the inner Himalayas, we not only have huge mountains, but we also have these really, really nice serene lakes. Then we have the high altitude valleys. Here people don't grow maize. They will usually grow pasture. These are still in high altitude. This would be about 3,000, which is about 10,000 feet. And if you recall the map which I showed you earlier, where Nepal had almost lost most of its forest, this is what the forest looks like actually. And many people also call these forests as temperate rainforest. Actually, if you see here, you would easily be able to see 10, 11 different species flowering at the same time. In Nepal, it's no longer there. And these forests are important because it is these flowers which this monkey is feeding on. This monkey is an endangered species. It's only found within the eastern Himalayas, I think, and now only in Butão. This is a golden langur. These are a pair of rufous-necked hornbills. By the way, for those of you who are not very familiar with birds, in the bird world, it is the male who is the much more attractive one. So, but I always say in our world, we should still prefer it the way it is, where the females are much more attractive. And the female is the dull one here. I'm showing this for a reason, because if you want to look at these birds and if you go to Nepal, you will not see them anymore. You can't see them. If you go to Arunachal Pradesh, you can't see them because they hunt them for their beaks. So what the Arunachal people do is they have to kill it so that they can use this for their ceremonies. So what some of our friends in India are now doing is they're making artificial beaks of these birds from fiber, glass fiber. This is a snow leopard. It's really found high up. In that same landscape, you have species like the Pallas cat. This would be about the size of a domestic cat, but slightly bigger and slightly fatter. This is a Tibetan wolf. And most of these animals I'm showing you, not much is known about it. So science and what these animals are doing in the wild is still a very open question in Butão and the Himalayas. This is the wild dog, and actually it is much more endangered than the snow leopard and the tiger. So very less numbers, because these, when these dogs were surviving in the 60s, they were feeding a lot on cattle, which our farmers use. And what the government decided was, because the farmers were losing a lot of the cattle, they decided to poison the cattle. And because these dogs were feeding on the cattle, their population actually plummeted. They were really affected by this. But now they are recovering, so they are coming back into the landscape. This is a red panda. So it's not only the Chinese who have pandas. We have a lot of pandas as well. So this is a red panda. And if you focus on the landscape, I will show you that this is a red panda. Then there's a Himalayan black bear in the same kind of landscape. And then at 3,500 meters, this is a tiger. So I don't know whether you know it in Portugal, but BBC did a fantastic documentary about tigers in Bhutan. And they claim to have discovered tigers in the snow. I think that's a part they lied, because we always knew that there were tigers at this altitude. So what they say about not believing everything you read and not believing everything you see is very, very true. People can lie. They still do. So what I'm trying to show you now is that this is about 3,500 meters. This is about 11,000 feet way up. And then if you come down, this tiger is at about 1,200 feet. This is like the middle belt. So this tiger is crossing a creek from here. And this is really low. So because in Bhutan we have this really continuous forest cover, it allows for even species like the tiger, which needs a broad or really large habitats to survive. And this is again a tiger going into a bamboo grove. And in the same spot you see a golden cat. And again, this is a tiger with cubs. One of the things I want to point out here is this is at about 2,000 meters above sea level. And when we found tigers here, many Indian biologists and many foreign biologists we're saying, well, it cannot be, Tigers will not, you may be finding tigers in the mountains, but they will not be breeding there. They must be just coming up for a quick snack and going back down. It's not like that. They actually do live up there. They breed in the mountains. Again, a golden cat at 4,000. So this is a similar species. This cat actually comes in 4 different types of morphs, different colors. This is a marbled cat, leopard. So these are all caught by camera traps, which we have used across Bhutan. And what we are finding now is that there are about 10 species of cats in Bhutan, such cats. What it means is the habitats are really good. There is enough prey, there is less disturbance. And only 2 other places in the world that we know of have the same kind of richness. Probably in the Amazon, I would assume, and then some places in India. Nowhere else sustains this kind of diversity. So in terms of diversity, especially cat diversity, it's really, really high. This is a monal pheasant. It's supposed to be one of the most iridescent birds. So when the light reflects on it, it's very, very colorful. So again, this is the male. Oh, by the way, this is photoshopped. So this is actually one female which is passing him by. And like most men, it's just admiring the female go by. But if you focus on this landscape, okay, we have noted that there are pheasants, there are golden cats, there are marbled cats, there are also tigers in the same landscape. But in the same landscape, there are also yaks. So these are not wild, these are domestic yaks. So these are animals like cows. Yeah? People use them to get milk and cheese. And this is a herder. There's also sheep in this landscape. And these are how our herders look like. So he's carrying this thing he's carrying is for collecting the milk. And what the woman is carrying is to churn the milk to produce cheese and butter. Here it's important to note that usually in the West, usually in conservation today, the general story is that man and nature cannot survive together, isn't it? Oh, the wild has to be left as wild, man has to be separate, oh, it cannot be together. But not necessarily true. I think everything can coexist. I think it's all about thresholds. Obviously, if you come and make everything concrete here, obviously it's not going to be possible. But as long as human beings are there in not such a high density, tigers will also come. All the biodiversity, it will still be there. Again, Photoshop, these are cranes. They stay in summer, in winter they stay in Bhutan, and in summer they go all the way up till Tibet. The point being here that when we talk about diversity, when we talk about conservation, when we talk about our planet in general, I think one of the fundamental things we have to understand is how all the processes are connected to each other. For instance, these cranes, they connect Bhutan, Tibet, and India. So they stay here in winter and they go all the way up to this lake in summer in Tibet. And what we are finding now is that it's not only the cranes but also the griffins. These are vultures. So we caught them in Bhutan. Bhutan is here. They go up to Tibet. Then they fly all the way down to Nepal. This is half of Nepal within a span of about 2-3 weeks. Yeah. But these vultures are scavengers. So they have to look for dead things to eat. So in a way, usually human beings don't celebrate death. Or we don't want to die. But they have to celebrate death. Because for them, death is good news. Death is food. But the question is, if the vultures are here, if something is dying here, how do they know it? Or do they just take a chance? So these are, in biology, again, these are very, very open questions. So if you are a scavenger, what is your best strategy to survive? So not only the vultures, not only the cranes, these are called satire tragopans. They also walk. They also migrate. So this is a valley. This is about just about 4 or 5 kilometers. But in terms of altitude, this is about 3,000. This is about 1,200 valley. So what these birds do is they stay here in summer and walk down in winter. And they stay here for 3-4 months and then come back to the exact same place in summer. Now, when we talk about migration, usually you're reminded about the magnificent things in Africa, isn't it? Either the zebra migration or the gazelle or all these hordes of, what do you call that? Migration in the plains is Africa. But to me, these are equally, amazing. But these can only, in Africa, maybe you can take a helicopter and see all this amazing migration. This you cannot. This you have to place a tiny GPS tag on these birds. And then download the data so that you can appreciate it. So again, science again, right? The role of science. To me, science is not only about progress, but also about conservation, because science demonstrates the magic of the wild, I think, to me. Very, very importantly. Science shows how magical the wild is. And then it sort of behooves us, or it challenges us to conserve it better. So this bird, for instance, takes 5 days to track down and comes back to the same place in spring. And people were asking me, so how do the birds know it, to come to the same place? They call it site fidelity in the biological language. God knows. Even if you were to walk, you take 3 days. If you are trekking in this region, you will take 3 days. So amazing landscape, amazing phenomena going on within that landscape, amazing richness. And Bhutan is also a place where many things are still not known. Leave alone the species, I think even about the people, many people don't know where Bhutan is. So when we were studying in the West, we would usually pretend to be Chinese. So if usually people will ask you where you're from, so you will say, I'm from Bhutan. Then where is that? Then you will have to explain, China is to the north, India is to the south. So usually the best thing is, I'm from Hong Kong. It's a very easy answer. But just as a side, when we were studying, the Chinese takeaways. So two of us, we were ordering some Chinese takeaway, the chow mein noodles. And then this owner of the Chinese takeaway asked us, where are you from? So we said, we are from Hong Kong. So he said, which part of Hong Kong? I'm also from Hong Kong. Then we said, no. So sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. But Bhutan is also a country where, like I pointed out earlier, that we have a lot of rich forest cover, right? So like I was saying, in Southeast Asia, Bhutan might be the only country where we have seen a net increase in forest cover. So if you look at Malaysia, like I said, oil palm plantation. If you look at Indonesia, oil palm plantation. Everything is changing sort of for the good, I think, in Bhutan. So all these light green patches you see are areas which have not been forest, but have become forest now. And that has happened for a reason, because after the 1990s, from the early 1980s, I think, a lot of effort has gone into conservation. As of now, we have 50% under protected areas in Bhutan. 50% of our total land area. I have a problem with that, because this is a predominantly Western-driven agenda. National parks are supposed to be America's best idea. And I was telling this to some of my colleagues when I had a meeting just earlier this week. And he was saying, no. Actually, it is a Scottish person called John Muir who went to the US. Regardless, this idea of blocking up spaces and that man and nature cannot exist has come from the West. And I really do not know whether this is the best way of doing conservation today in Bhutan. I say this for a reason, because this is a very, very sacred site in Bhutan. This is called Singezong, high up in the mountains. This region has always been protected by people. For 6 months in a year, you cannot enter these forests, because they are believed to be also home to deities and gods and others. So in a way, the Western concept of blocking up space and our concept of blocking up time, I think it's time to reconcile these two and see how better we can do this. So within this context, Bhutan, this is all of Bhutan. We have a lot of protected areas here. And these orange dots are all the places where we have settlements. It is not as big as Porto or Lisbon or any other. These are all very tiny, tiny, tiny villages. But these people have the same needs as people everywhere on the world. And they place sort of certain pressures on the land. This is what a typical Bhutanese village would look like in the rural east. So you would have houses, you would have maize or rice, and then these are for cattle. So you would grow this also to feed the cattle. And this is how most of the people used to live till now. But these are changing now, very, very rapidly. So if you look at this house, it is roofed with bamboo. If you look at these houses, it's roofed with iron sheets now. So iron sheets last longer. They last for 20, 25 years. These would have to be changed every 5 years. So what conservation organizations are doing is they're going to the villages and giving these iron sheets. Now again, whether that's a good thing to do or not, I don't know. Because these iron sheets have to come all the way from India. They are manufactured in factories. The bamboos are always sustainably grown in our forest. There is no carbon emission associated with it. It's a very sustainable process. But the world is a strange place now. The world is a very strange place. We want to work less. We want to domesticate everything. Right? I don't want to make you guys sad. So it's, like I said, it's predominantly agrarian. So here you will see an old woman. This is paddy. She's growing paddy. So this still, most of the Bhutanese landscape will still look something like this. This is towards central Bhutan. This is a lot of sort of the poorer side. So you can see this is probably going to the cattle. She's washing. Probably she'll cook in this as well, but she's washing her 2 babies here as well. But these are images you will be harder to see with every passing day. 10, 20 years from today, I doubt you will see this. So the reason being, everybody is leaving the villages. Everybody. So this graph here shows the black bar indicates people who are on the land, yeah, in the villages. And the gray bars are people who are, the gray bars are people who are in the villages. The black bar are the people who are out. You can see that within the 10 to 40 range, most people are out. So as soon as they get educated, they're leaving the farms. So that is why even old people still have to work. But good news is, regardless of that, I think they're still producing babies. Here, yeah, less than 10. They're still active. I don't know how long that will last, because once you really get old, I don't think it'll happen. But anyway. So there are, when we talk about Bhutan, we look at this, fantastic country. Many people say, are you the happiest people on the planet? I don't know. Because there are problems. People have to do something to live, isn't it? So for instance, what is happening now in most of the highland areas, I will just go back to the map. In these regions, these are like really high. There is a fungus and a caterpillar. It's called cordyceps. It is in huge demand from the Chinese. Sometimes a kilogram of this fungus caterpillar combination sells for more than $50,000. The really good ones. Yeah. So what do Bhutanese do? They go and collect it so as to sell to the Chinese. But when they go really high up, usually this is collected in August, July, August. It's very, lot of rain, it's very cold, so they need to keep warm. These people need to keep warm. So then they start cutting these rhododendron trees. Yeah? These rhododendron trees are the only trees at that altitude. Big trees will not grow. And these trees, because it's at a very high altitude, take very long to grow. So in 100 years, they might grow only to about this much. But in one season, they will cut most of it. So that's very slow growing. So this is from 1800 to 2008. It's only put on about 10 centimeters or something. So 100 years of growth is cut in one summer to get this caterpillar. And that's how they collect it at the really high altitude places of Bhutan. This woman is looking for the fungus. But what is also happening is not only are they spoiling the forest, obviously they are getting a lot of income from this, but they are also destroying the forest and they are also littering a lot. So they take plastic all the way up. So if you think about Bhutan and the Himalayas as a place where you have vast expanses of natural landscapes, pure and pristine, that is also changing very fast. You could be in for a shock. There will be a lot of garbage up there. So a lot of challenges. The other major challenge in Bhutan, which Bhutan will undergo a rapid change because of hydropower now. Every major river will be dammed. So these are all the places, these are all rivers. These are all the places where there is going to be a hydropower dam. All the electricity is sold to India. India needs power. We need revenues. In 20 years, they are saying they will put 10,000 megawatts. That's like millions and millions of homes can be lighted up. But when we look at Bhutan, we are talking about less than 1 million people. What are we going to do with all the money? How many in Porto? 5 million? Porto population. 10 million. 1 million. Less than Porto. So the question is, do we really need to destroy all the rivers? And for what? And even tourists, nowadays, the Bhutanese government will say, well, we need to increase tourism. We need to bring in more people. In total, just from 2008 to 12, I think there were like 100,000 tourists. That is like one tourist for every 6 Bhutanese. That's quite a lot. And with tourism comes also a lot of influences. In any case, so far, I think we have still been very lucky. Our environment is still very intact. We have enough food. There's water to drink. We have a good culture. That has happened because of, to my mind, a very powerful reason: leadership. Leadership is so very essential. And this is the 4th king who introduced democracy in Bhutan. So in 2008, now we are a democracy, so we became a constitutional democracy. He gave up his throne. And he was only 53 years old. So in the modern world today, when you look at North Korea or when you look at Arabic countries, one of the reasons why Bhutan is special is, I think, because of leaders like him. Who in the right mind would want to give up power at 53 years of age? Well, when you are burning, when you have health, when you have, he has got good looks. Of course, he has 4 wives. Please don't tape that if that's being taped. So, the point I'm trying to make is the philosophy, isn't it? I mean, in life, the ability to give up, I think, is very, very powerful. So now he has given his powers to the 5th king. Now he is about 34 years old. So he is the head of a constitutional monarchy. So we have an elected government. But it was really up to him. He could be king even today. He's just 60 years old. So I think that has been one of the most powerful things in Bhutan, is that we have had really, really good leadership. But I don't know how democracy will play out, because it's a totally different game. So we'll have to learn how to play it. And this great man also introduced the concept of gross national happiness. That's where these days people say, oh, everybody must be happy in Bhutan. Not necessarily, but gross national happiness, I think, is an idea which he coined it. And what he said was that as a society, when we move forward, we should always look at 4 things. So one is environmental conservation. The other one is cultural preservation, balanced development, and good governance. Particularly good governance is very, very important, I think, if you want to move forward. So he said that these 4 things are very, very important if you want to move ahead in a sustainable way. And I think Bhutan is also unique because of values, I think. I think Paulo has been there many times. He can say if I'm wrong. This is called Taksang. This is a really, really special temple. It's been built in the 8th century right on a cliff. And many, many people would be residing here. For some would spend their lives here. So mostly to do with tolerance, empathy, and wisdom, I think. But I feel sad sometimes because in this day and age, again, it's very, very difficult to hold on to this. Particularly the wisdom. I think empathy, everybody has empathy, I think. I was very happy that for the first time when I came to Europe, the person who was checking the passport at least had a smile on his face. That was at Porto. If you go to Germany, they'll blah, blah, blah. So at least I was thinking there are still some nice countries around the world. So empathy, yeah? You also want for the other person what you want for yourself. Very important. If you want only for yourself and don't care about the others, the world may not be so good. Tolerance and wisdom. I think knowledge is very, very important. But more important than knowledge, if the knowledge doesn't provide you wisdom to appreciate life more, then what is the use of that knowledge? Where will that knowledge take us? So essentially, because we have been built up, we have been brought up with these values, I think Bhutan is still sort of unique culturally. And I have a few more slides now. I'm going to end. So these are, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to paint sort of the culture of what is Bhutan. So these are 2 monks. So usually in the olden days, there were a lot of monks. Every family would send a monk. And I'll put here, what is the goal of life? In Bhutan, if given a chance, or if you are asked, what do you really want to do? Most Bhutanese, I think, will answer, it's not about money. It's not about also family. Family is very important, of course. But given a chance, they would want to find truth about what is life, or why are we here. I think this is very important also. And I think this runs in the fabric of what makes us Bhutanese. So with that, this is a very short glimpse. I'm very honored to be here, and I sincerely hope that it has not been a waste of time. It's very difficult to cover everything about a country in 45 minutes. But I'll be happy to take questions. I got this from the web, so I'm sure the spelling is correct. I don't know whether the pronunciation will be correct. Obrigadissimo. To my friend and mentor, Professor Paulo. And most of the pictures of the camera traps I showed is from my friend Sring Tempa to the University of Porto and Serralves Foundation. And this is again a beautiful zone. And probably a tour company if you all want to visit Bhutan. So with that, thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure.
The third thing that comes to my mind, I think, is very difficult to say anything after this talk, and mainly after these thoughts. When I go to Butão, they call me professor, but I think I am probably the one that is not the professor. I think those people are the ones that are teaching us the so-called civilized world to how we should think and live. And they say amazing things like, this person is a good person because he thinks. And usually it's very rare that the people saying such a thing. So, because thinking now is apparently a thing the people don't give, we have no time for thinking, but they need time for thinking. And it's amazing to see, if you for sure you have taken attention what Nawang was saying, but so you see that is a completely intermingle between the society and the nature. The forest is sacred. The places to conserve. We don't need to remove the people. This is things that I think for our world it is impossible. Even I think in Portugal, in some way, and this is also amazing, my feeling when I was in Bhutan, that in some way, even we are 800 kilometers far away, there are some, probably as we are in the extreme, there are something that we still have in common. And probably it was because of the first missionary was there, but the first missionary that was there was a Portuguese. Probably that we, in the past times, not that long time ago, the Portuguese way of living was quite similar to Bhutan. But anyway, I think, and I'm very happy today, this is a very happy day for me, Nawang, because I was the possibility to share this experience, this amazing experience that I had in the last 4 years that I have been there twice, and to bring a little bit of Bhutan here. And as he was saying, as Nawang was saying, it's not that common that we meet a Bhutanese person, but this is not also that common that we meet a person like Dr. Nawang. And I really would like to appreciate your availability and your kindness for coming here, and I also would like to, in public, appreciate a lot the things that you teach me. And sorry to just to begin like that, but I think I feel very strong emotions, not only being here, but also with being in this moment. And but for sure you are sharing this magic world with me, and I believe that you have some questions, comments that you would like to do. So please, if anyone wants to give some to start.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your talk. It's really amazing and really inspiring. You have a great country. It's like the dream for every biologist, I think. But regarding your presentation, I have two questions. The first one has to do with your neighbor, China. You know that given that you have 10 species of cats, and cats are really appreciated by Chinese traditional medicine, do you have a lot of problems or any problems with Chinese poachers for hunting species, poaching tigers, snow leopards for traditional Chinese medicine? Is that a problem for you, and how do you deal with it? And the second one has to do with what you said about having snow leopards and tigers in the same place. My idea was that snow leopards used to live in steeper slopes with less forest cover, and tigers much more into forests. So they occur in the same areas, but do they share habitats? I mean, how do they coexist? Because I imagine that there's a very strong potential for interspecific killing. Do you have any records of that? Yeah, that's it. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. I think I will answer the less contentious of the two regarding the sharing of the tiger and the snow leopard. I think what we meant to say was that in terms of overlap, they may not be always existing together, but they will be definitely narrow bands where the tiger and the snow leopards would exist. So only in that sense I mentioned. Because if you look at Nepal now, the range where the snow leopard is and the range where the tiger is, the middle belt is gone. So the tigers really can't go all the way up. So in that context, I mentioned it. When it comes to the Chinese, I'll have, with your permission, I'll have to start with a joke. We had, you remember the black-necked cranes I showed you? The ones which are migrating all the way to China. A few years ago, some of these black-necked cranes were killed in some of our valleys. So we didn't know what killed it. So a colleague of mine who studies these black-necked cranes have a friend in China. So he wrote to this Chinese friend and said, something has been killing the cranes. What do you think it is? And the Chinese friend replied to him that all cranes are Chinese property. but I'm sorry some of you don't find that very funny, but anyway. I find it very funny because that to me paints the thing of how the Chinese think today. That how they think. It's very, I also think it's very dangerous sometimes. But, so when it comes to the tigers, we do have problems with poaching. Actually, 2 of the tigers which you saw have already been killed. The one which was crossing the river, and the big one which I showed further down. They have both been killed. And the network is that the Indians kill it. There are Indian poachers, but we have been told that it goes to China. Yeah. So the demand is actually having an impact on the tigers in Bhutan. Yeah. So there is a problem.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And meanwhile, for sure, there are more questions. Yes, please.
Professor Nwang, I was so amazed with your presentation. I have so many questions that I really don't know how to begin to ask you anything. I'm not a biologist, so I am an economist. My graduation is very technocratic, but I really like 2 things, nature and travel. So your country is really something to have. I have to put in my travel agenda because it's really amazing. You know, some years ago I heard that in Bhutan you could not smoke, and I was a smoker, and I said, well, what a shame, I cannot go to Bhutan. But in the meantime, I gave up, so now I can go to Bhutan. But I really would like to learn more. How can a small country, as you said, as you mentioned, surrounded by big tigers like China and India and mostly those 2 big countries, how can you survive and strive to have a so different approach to nature and environment? Because as I saw in the graphs and pictures you showed us, even Nepal, I thought that Nepal was still quite protected, but it doesn't seem so. So how can a country really move forward and to keep this very strict line with such big dangers around? And I really would like you to say, if it's possible, to tell us how can a country like your country have such a different political approach regarding the other big ones around you? Thank you.
Hello. Thank you. You know, in Bhutan, we make a lot of funny rules because we are sort of funny people. One is this rule on smoking. So the rule was you cannot buy cigarettes, but you can smoke. But associated with that, if you allow me, is that we like to eat meat, the Bhutanese, but we don't like to kill. So similar things. But anyway, with regard to that other question, I think so far, I think the danger has not been so much from India and China, because whatever influence they would have had by now, because we have always been with them. So even the political setup, it is definitely influenced by India. But when they made the constitution, they made it in such a way that it was a little different. I think the danger more today is from access to information. And also the way we do education, I think. How do you tell young Bhutanese that what we have is special? It will be difficult, I think. Because young Bhutanese girls and boys now wants to be like Koreans. Koreans is fine. They want to be like sometimes hip-hop artists in the US, which is not so good. But so these are challenges I think we'll have to see. My only thing is, when we were young, we were also like that. But as we grew up, we saw the value in our own thing. And my only wish and prayer is that young Bhutanese will have that wisdom as well. But let's see. So education would be very important, I think. Contemplative education. Usually as human beings, we get carried away very easily. We get carried away, but that's how we are. So it's a difficult question. I don't know how to answer it.
Thanks. Any more questions?
Hi, I have two children aged 8 and 11, which I brought here because I think the education of the next generation is very important. I want to know how you do for the education of the new generations, because we try to talk about them, about the conservation and all that, but this is different. How you do it there in Bhutan? For the young generation to be aware of what you have is very different.
I think, unfortunately, we are all going the same direction. There are many experiments, I think, now. One of the in Bhutan, we have two systems. One is the Western system. So we do it exactly like all the other countries do it, Portugal or US but we also have an alternative. We have this monk and nun system. There is no gender issue again. I've been very sensitive to gender issues. Usually people are very sensitive to gender issues. So in the monk system, what they do is they educate totally on just philosophy. And that, actually, surprisingly, that produces sometimes much more balanced people. Surprisingly. You wouldn't think so, but that's how it is. So it may be really worthwhile to look at how they do it and try to merge the two. Because I personally think that in our day and age, is this concept of high school, then college, is it still relevant today? I don't know. I don't know many things. I just like to. But really, do we need to spend 21 years? And then what? I don't know. But we try.
Raquel.
Thank you, Dr. Nawang, for your presentation. I just wanted to add something to the conversation. You talked several times about linkage in your presentation, and I really think that's one of the way that the young should, the question that we're talking about, how the next generation would see Bhutan as something different, and the linkage to the land could not be lost. And I'm really concerned when you show that the young are leaving the rural, and that should be something to worry in the future. And that's it.
It's not more of a question, but what I think is in continuation to that. It's just my personal belief. I'm not an expert in education. But I think today, we need to focus a little more on contemplation, I think. And contemplate, because now, even in Bhutan, the suicide rates are really, really high. This was something which was non-existent in Bhutanese society 20, 30 years ago. Now everybody is suiciding. See, if you think carefully, even some people without arms and legs, they want to live, isn't it? Sometimes people don't have eyes, they want to live. People who have everything, why are they suiciding? Something is terribly wrong. So, in the sense of contemplation, what I mean is, you contemplate the opportunities and the blessings you have, isn't it? I think what I'm trying to say is, if you don't contemplate and appreciate what you have, then it will drive you to suicide or drugs or all these kind of things. So somehow including contemplation, I think, is very, very important. Like, what I really appreciate here in Porto is the ocean. You know? What a blessing it is that you have an ocean right there. So something like that. I think modern children need a little bit more contemplation. I think it will be important, because these days everything is so technologically fantastic that we have been somehow made to believe that technology will solve everything. I don't think so.
But if I can take this, just sorry. One thing that is also amazing me when I've been there in Bhutan, and also you mentioned this here, that you want to use the technology, you want to use science, but to demonstrate how beautiful is the nature. Can you please go a little bit further, because I have to tell everybody that you probably have seen on the top, on the bottom, that all these pictures were camera traps and were collected by researchers and technicians that work in Dr. Nawang Institute. There is no National Geographic trucks or fancy materials. So there are people that are going there, walking and just doing this amazing work. But can you go a little bit?
Actually, before I answer Paulo's thing, I just want to say that, like, this phone, it's so beautiful, I think. But many of us today, we use iPhones, we use whatever. We even use computers, these microphones, the water we drink. Everything is so, magical, isn't it? But we take it for granted. That is what I mean by contemplation. A little bit more of being grounded. That if you have a phone, you just appreciate the magic. How is it that I can dial a number and talk to someone? To me, that is just mind-blowing. And every time you get into an aeroplane, oh my God, it's just... how is it that you are inside the tube, a metal tube, and it takes you from Porto to Nepal and to Butão? Just so magical. So I think young human beings to have that contemplation and appreciation, I think that it may make the world a little bit more better. But coming on from what Professor Paulo said, we have been doing a lot of research on not only camera traps, also putting radio tags on the cranes, for example. And what we are finding now, also the griffins, what we are finding now is that, these animals are doing fantastic things. They're crossing some of the highest mountains. So, to us, but that's again one problem with science is they will just write a fantastic scientific paper. They will have introduction, materials and methods, results, discussion and conclusion. Very, very dry. Or it was statistically significant, blah, blah. But I think beyond that, if you can demonstrate to people that, look, that there is a bird which just flies across the Himalayas, beats his wings these many times, surveys the land, and then goes to Tibet, and every year it does that. Its babies do that. I think it reconnects people, I think, a little bit closer to the animals. And the animal is then not seen just as a foreign objective. The animal is seen with fascination, I think. You have a little bit more respect. And the example I give is not only the black-necked cranes, but not research done by us. Like the bar-tailed godwit, there's a bird which flies from Alaska to New Zealand for 7 days, and it doesn't stop anywhere. I think that's pretty magical. But to be able to give that information so that people have a, wow, that I am not the only one. Because that's the problem. When you always think I'm the only one, then it's a problem.
Question.
Thank you very much. I'm also very inspired with this emotion. I'd like to ask you, and connected with this that you are saying of telling people that are not from the scientific world, explaining these magical details of the animals or the biodiversity. Is it easy in Butão to connect this to scientific world, the society and the science, or the society and the ecology? Or could you give some examples of the projects that are going together with the people in the rural areas, for instance?
We have not made much progress on that, but what we are trying to do is most of the research that we do, we are also trying to convert it to stories and children's books, and then give it to schools so that children can look at it, read it, and appreciate a little bit more. Yeah, so in a small way, we are trying to do that. So most of these camera trap pictures, actually, we have already started. It will be made into a children's book. So, for instance, on the bamboo forest which you saw, there was a tiger, there's a golden cat. All of them are sharing that space. So somehow, if that magic can also be opened up to children, I think it may work. Because what we experience as children is very, very important, I think.
Children book before going to scientific papers, which is also, I should highlight that. Any more questions? Yes? This one, please. It's over there in the middle.
First of all, I would like to thank you for such an inspiring presentation. I was quite ignorant when it comes to Bhutan, and I certainly learned a lot today. You definitely have a lot to teach to us as Westerners when it comes to put wisdom on top of importance in comparison with the exterior signs of wealth, which I think are overrated here in the West, and I think that's definitely something you can teach us. Apart from this, in your presentation, you talk a lot about the influence of income and the impact it has on conservation of nature and the loss of habitats for the sake of wealth and increased income. Not exclusively on Bhutan, it happens all over the world. And how do you tell the population and how do you convince people that there are certain things that are more important, and how do you sort the thing that, well, people lose income, then what are they going to get instead? Because it's not easy to replace one thing for the other. And when people lose income, you have to compensate them for that. Is the government doing anything about this? How do you tackle these situations? Because they definitely have an impact on how you conserve such fragile ecosystems that take such a long time to grow.
We are all fighting a losing battle, I think. Like I said, I think going back to the contemplation thing, I think will be the only solution, I think, because you can go and tell a farmer that he should not abandon his cattle. You can do that. You can also tell him that, oh, you must appreciate nature. Fine. The problem, I think, is, and then what is happening now is the government is also encouraging the farmers' children to stay on the farm. Yeah. The question is, I have a son. Will I want my son to be a farmer? Will I want my son not to go to school? Will I want my son not to have money? These are very, very difficult questions. So for the others, oh, no, you stay on the farm. It's very good. I will... as a society, it's always very romantic when you look at from the other side. So that is where, this is a good question, but I just want to raise one thing about the whole climate change debate here. So the climate change debate is also not working because of these kind of things. So let's say Copenhagen, that was in Denmark, in Copenhagen. It was very, very cold. So I was very fortunate, I was lucky to go and see what was happening. So if you go to Denmark, Copenhagen in winter, once you step inside their house, you will not feel that it's winter. Even their toilets are heated. Yeah. And now the Danish government wants Asian countries not to even heat their bedrooms. So how will you get a consensus? I think these are playing out on many, many different levels. Yeah, so like I said, it's very difficult. So that is why one of the graphs I showed, many people are leaving the farms now. Usually for us, because I also work for a government, so it's very easy for us to tell, oh, you must go back to the farms, But will you do it for yourself? Will you want that future for your children? I don't know, it's going to take time. Now, like in the US, if the farms are heavily subsidized, maybe yes. But it's hard work. So the point I'm trying to make is that there are no easy, I think, solutions. And usually governments get it wrong. So that's why when people ask, oh, you all are the happiest people on the planet. It's not as simple as that, I think. Every country has challenge. Every human beings have challenge.
Yeah. This is not an easy answer, and also is why I think it is amazing the whole effort that you are doing, and you are doing in some way in the natural way. And one thing that I would like to ask you, Nawang, as well, is that the relation between human and wildlife is by far not easy, and for sure you also have human-wildlife conflicts, because the farmer, for sure, even I believe that you have a lot of praise, but the tiger can kill very probably often a cow, or even the son or the farmer. Yeah. So how this situation also about the human-wildlife conflicts?
So usually this concept of conflict, we have been fortunate in Bhutan that the villager usually looks at the tiger as somehow sacred, It is not an ordinary animal. It's very magical, it's very powerful. So the farmer has a lot of respect for the tiger. So traditionally, about 20 years ago, if a tiger came and ate a cattle, the farmer will never anyway send healthy cattle in the forest. The healthy cattle he will always keep near his farms. So the 1-2 very weak cattle, they may be going into the forest, that the tiger will kill. But there was never a conflict. The farmer was okay with it. But then we opened our doors to development. Then we have some consultants from WWF. We have professors like Paolo, and then they come in and then they say, "Oh, you have a conflict." And then I also think there is a conflict. Then the farmer thinks there is a conflict, you see. It's not that bad. The farmer was, as far as we know, the farmer was always okay with the tiger taking 1-2 cattle, always okay. But now we have a conflict. Now we cannot go back. Now we have to compensate. Now the farmers have become lazy. Now the farmers are looking at the tigers as an incentive to get money or whatever. So the situation has changed. But sometimes when the tiger is very old and he can't hunt, sometimes he comes near the villages and it does become a nuisance. But the frequency of those things are too less to be termed as a compensation. And because Bhutan is such a poor country, this whole it exactly happened like I said. Oh, you have a conflict. Then they got one very rich American woman. She gave $50,000. Said, you must compensate your poor farmers. She was a very kind woman. And the 50,000 ran out. The 50,000 was all taken. But the problem is still there. Yeah. So who is going to give the next 50,000 now? So usually in our countries, in very poor countries like ours, in Nepal, in Bhutan, I also think now education is very important, so that we can have an equal debate with Westerners, with educationists outside, especially with UN organizations, because sometimes they can bring in a lot of bad ideas, I think.
So I hope that I'm not bringing bad ideas. So I think it is quite interesting, and probably all of us would like to continue here, but probably I think we have to finish, but probably we have time for a last question, if João allow me. Yes, so the last question.
Okay. The last question, and thanks for your presentations. I would like to know how people respect the sacred places, sacred mountains you talk about. How people do with it. 6 months without people, and the weather helps too.
So
okay, that's my question.
So usually what happens is traditionally every village would have a huge forest which they would consider sacred. And how they start is, once they start to crop, which is usually in March, then they would call some people and they would have some ritual. Usually do a lot of ritual. And then the village would agree that now nobody enters that forest. So they would place stones and then nobody enters. If people do enter, then they are fine. There are social mechanisms in place which fines that certain person. But the belief is that if they do go in, because these places are also occupied by different creatures unlike us, maybe gods or spirits or whatever, that they will inflict bad things on the communities. So it's like a wrathful kind of deity. So if somebody enters, then usually it's associated with storms or heavy rainfalls, which destroys the crops and other things. So nowadays, when we talk to Western scholars, they always say, well, within this indigenous knowledge, there was inherent knowledge of trying to conserve watersheds and trying to conserve biodiversity. I think that happened by chance. That happened as a byproduct of people's beliefs, which is good, I think. But as a sad fact, these things are also now very soon going to be just in books and stories. Many people will not practice it, because now the job of protecting the forest is on the government and not on the people. So, I don't know whether I answered you. But
So thank you very much, and I think we should close now, and I really like to thank again Nawang for coming here and giving this amazing lecture. I think you are the real professor, and you gave a very nice lesson of life and lessons how we should preserve the nature and how we should contemplate the nature. And I hope you accept me as a student still for the next years, that I can continue visiting you, and I hope also to extend this opportunity to some of my colleagues. So thank you again for coming, and thank you again the Serralves Foundation for giving us the opportunity to bring here Dr. Nawang.